It was a calm day at the research station on the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, a quiet part of the universe where only the bravest explorers dared to venture. The stars shimmered in the vast blackness, their light carrying stories of a time long past. The station was a small, circular outpost made to study distant worlds, but today it was alive with activity. Inside the control room, Captain Elias Voss sat in front of a large console, scanning through routine reports. He was a seasoned officer, stoic, reliable, and determined. His job was usually uneventful, filled with data collection and monitoring distant signals. But today was different. He had just received an alert from one of the deep space antennas. The signal was faint, but it was something. It was a distress call, not from any known species, but from a planet deep in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a planet called Solven. Elias leaned forward, tapping a few buttons on the console to zoom in on the signal. It was a coded message, aged but clear enough to read. The signal had been sent nearly 500 years ago. The message was a desperate cry for help, recorded by a civilization that humanity had long believed to be extinct, the Veltari. They can't be. They were wiped out, Elias muttered under his breath. The Veltari had once been known as an advanced race, but they vanished mysteriously centuries ago, leaving behind nothing but ruins and rumors. It was one of the greatest mysteries of the galaxy. No one had ever found proof of their existence again, until now. His curiosity piqued. Elias immediately turned to Dr. Mira Rains, a brilliant sinologist and the foremost expert on the Veltari. She had spent years studying old artifacts and ancient records in hopes of uncovering secrets about this lost civilization. Dr. Rains, you need to see this, Elias called out to her. Mira walked over, her brow furrowing as she read the message. She had always believed the Veltari were gone, wiped out by a mysterious plague or natural disaster. The thought of them still existing in some form was both thrilling and unsettling. She looked at Elias with disbelief. Could it be real? She asked. Is this some kind of trap, or... It's real. The signal came from Solven, Elias replied, his voice steady, though the weight of the situation pressed on him. We have to check it out. Mira didn't hesitate. She knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Together, they would discover the truth about the Veltari. The decision was quickly made to send a human exploration team to the planet. The Galactic Exploration Vessel Unity, a sleek, advanced ship designed for deep space travel, was ready to depart. The crew, led by Elias, consisted of skilled engineers, pilots, and scientists, all eager to explore the unknown. As the ship prepared for departure, the crew gathered in the briefing room. Elias stood at the front, facing a team of excited and nervous faces. His voice echoed in the small room as he spoke. We don't know what we're going to find on Solven, he began. But we do know one thing. There's a chance to learn something humanity has been searching for centuries. Whatever happens, we need to be prepared for the unknown. Mira stood beside him, her eyes scanning over the faces of the crew. She could feel the weight of their hopes and fears. The discovery of the Veltari could change everything, or it could be the greatest mistake humanity had ever made. But they had no choice but to find out. The Unity launched into the vastness of space, its engines roaring to life as it cut through the stars. The journey to Solven would take several days, and during that time, Elias and Mira spent every waking moment studying the data they had gathered. The planet Solven was located in a remote region of space, once believed to be uninhabitable. Its orbit was strange, and scans of the planet's surface showed signs of destruction, fossilized remains of ancient cities, but no signs of life. There were no records of any other species visiting the planet. It was as if the Veltari had disappeared into thin air. As they approached the planet, the crew stared out of the observation windows at the swirling clouds and the large broken ruins of a once great civilization. Elias stood next to Mira, both of them silently absorbing the sight. Something in the air seemed to stir, an ancient presence lingering. Prepare for landing, Elias ordered. For a moment, the crew stood in silence, all of them uncertain of what the next step should be. They had come so far. The Velteri had spent years working to control the dark seed, and now they had uncovered its true potential. But that knowledge felt like a curse. There was no going back. Elias turned to his crew. We don't have time to second-guess ourselves. The Drakveda could already be on their way. And if they find this, we won't be able to stop them. Mira clenched her fists, her eyes narrowed in determination. She didn't like it, but she knew Elias was right. They couldn't leave the dark seed here. The universe could not afford for it to fall into the wrong hands. Then let's do it, Mira said. We need to act before it's too late. But as Elias reached for the disruptor, the ground beneath their feet suddenly began to tremble. The walls of the chamber cracked, and an explosion of light filled the room. The dark seed was awakening, and with it, a force beyond anything they had ever encountered. The energy in the chamber shot up, overwhelming their senses. The crew staggered back as the light grew brighter and brighter, until it seemed to consume everything. We've triggered it, Elias shouted, trying to shield his eyes from the blinding light. We need to get out of here now. But the room was shaking violently, and the doors to the chamber slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic swept through the crew. The dark seed had done something to the planet, something they couldn't explain. It was as if the entire world was reacting to its power. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the room. It was not a voice from the crew, but something else, something ancient. Why do you seek to destroy what you do not understand? The voice boomed, its words shaking the walls around them. You cannot destroy the dark seed. It is part of this world, part of its soul. The crew froze, their eyes wide with shock. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, surrounding them with a sense of dread. What is this? Mira gasped, looking around frantically. Elias felt the weight of the voice pressing down on him. It wasn't just speaking to them, it was speaking through them. The planet itself seemed alive, aware of their presence. The dark seed is not a weapon, the voice continued. It is the heart of this world, the energy that keeps it alive. If you destroy it, you will destroy this planet and everything on it. Elias's heart skipped a beat. They had thought the dark seed was a weapon, something created for war, for control. But what if it wasn't? What if it was the very thing that gave this planet life? What do we do? Mira whispered, her voice trembling. Elias took a step forward, his mind racing. There had to be another way. He couldn't destroy this world, not after everything they had learned. But how could they stop the Drakva, who were already hunting for the power of the dark seed? If the Drakva took control of it, there would be no stopping them. Suddenly, the hum of the dark seed intensified, and a strange, calming presence filled the room. The walls seemed to pulse with the energy of the planet itself, and for the first time since they arrived, Elias felt a strange peace. It was as if the planet was trying to communicate with them, to show them its true nature. He looked at the dark seed, now glowing with a soft, warm light. It wasn't a weapon, but a life force, a source of power that the planet needed. But Elias knew one thing for certain. They couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. We can't destroy it, Elias said quietly. But we can keep it safe. He turned to Mira, who nodded. We need to take it with us, to hide it somewhere that the Drakva will never find it. The room began to calm as the planet's power seemed to settle. The light faded, and the ground stopped shaking. The doors to the chamber slowly opened, and the crew was free to leave. Elias took one last look at the dark seed, its energy now a gentle glow. It wasn't the end of their mission, but the beginning of a new one. They would protect the dark seed, and they would make sure it never fell into the wrong hands. As the crew made their way back to the Unity, Elias knew one thing for sure. The galaxy would never be the same, and it was up to them to make sure it stayed that way. The hologram shifted again, showing the final moments of the Velteri. The once proud civilization fell silent. The last images were of a peaceful city, now abandoned, with only the faintest traces of the Velteri's once great culture left behind. Elias stood still, absorbing the information. It was more than he had ever hoped for, and yet it left him with a heavy heart. The Velteri were gone, not by their own hands, but because of a powerful, merciless enemy. And now, centuries later, their legacy had been forgotten. Until now. Mira was the first to break the silence. This vault, it's their last hope. These are the records of everything they knew. But it's also a warning. A warning? Elias asked, his voice heavy. Yes, she replied, looking up at him. The Drakva didn't just destroy their world. They were relentless, and they're still out there, somewhere in the galaxy. If the Velteri couldn't defeat them, what chance do we have? Elias's mind raced as he processed her words. The implications of this discovery were enormous. Not only had they uncovered the fate of the Velteri, but they had also uncovered a threat that could put all of humanity at risk. The Drakva were still out there. Elias squinted into the distance. The entrance to the facility was visible now, a dark doorway that led into the heart of the base. It was almost as if the building itself was waiting for them, silent and unmoving. They moved toward the door, which opened with a slow, creaking motion, revealing a dark corridor inside. The air was stale, thick with the scent of age and neglect. They stepped inside cautiously, their boots making soft echoes as they walked. The lights flickered weakly overhead, casting long shadows across the walls. This place has been abandoned for years, Elias murmured. Yet it's still holding up. The Velteri were masters of engineering, Mira replied. Even their ruins are resilient. The deeper they went, the more they felt the weight of the silence pressing down on them. It was as if the entire base was holding its breath, waiting for something. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just walking through an old facility. They were walking through a tomb. As they reached the central chamber, they found what they had been looking for, a control room, large and imposing. The walls were lined with consoles, most of which were dark and inactive. But in the center of the room stood a large holographic display, its surface faintly glowing as if it had been waiting for someone to activate it. Mira stepped forward, her fingers hovering over the controls. Let me see if I can bring this online. A few moments later, the display flickered to life, showing a series of holographic images. The room grew brighter as the images filled the space. Blueprints, schematics, and videos of the Velteri's last moments. It was all there, every detail. This is it, Mira whispered. This is the knowledge they left behind. Elias studied the images closely. There were blueprints for advanced weapons, starships, and technologies that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. But there was something else, something darker. Among the schematics, there were files marked with warnings, symbols that resembled skulls and fire. What is this? Elias asked, pointing at the files. What are they hiding? Mira hesitated, her fingers trembling as she navigated through the files. It looks like research, but it's not something we've seen before. There are references to genetic manipulation, to something called the Dark Seed. It could be a weapon, or something worse. Elias's stomach tightened. Whatever the Velteri had been working on, it wasn't just advanced technology. They had been trying to create something, or perhaps unleash something, that could destroy not just the Drakva, but everyone. The screen displayed one final message, written in a language that Elias couldn't understand, but Mira quickly translated. It read, "Beware the darkness. It cannot be controlled." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. They had uncovered something far more dangerous than they had imagined. The Velteri's legacy was not just one of technology. It was a warning. Whatever the Drakva had destroyed, it had been for a reason. And now, it was up to humanity to ensure that the same mistake didn't happen again. "This isn't over," Elias said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We have to stop whatever this is, before it's too late." The news of the Valteri's dangerous project had shaken everyone on the Unity. What had seemed like a routine exploration mission had turned into something much darker. Elias, Mira, and the rest of the crew knew that they had to move quickly. If the Dark Seed project fell into the wrong hands, it could change everything. And they didn't have much time. Elias stood at the command center of the Unity, staring out at the vast emptiness of space. His mind was racing. He had seen the horrors in the Valteri base, the warnings, the files, the strange experiments. The Dark Seed wasn't just a weapon. It was something far worse. If it was unleashed, it could consume everything in its path, turning everything to darkness. "We need to act now," Elias said, breaking the silence. "We can't let this fall into the wrong hands. We're the only ones who can stop it." Mira, standing beside him, nodded. "But we don't know exactly what we're up against. The Dark Seed project is different. It's unlike anything we've encountered before." "I know," Elias replied, his voice grim. "But we have no choice. The Drakva might already know about it. If they do, they'll be coming for us." The crew gathered around the holographic table, where the data from the Valteri base was still displayed. The images of the project, the twisted research, and the terrifying warnings loomed over them. But there was something else. A location, coordinates that seemed to lead to a planet on the edge of the galaxy. The final piece of the puzzle. The Unity descended toward the surface, the ship's hull groaning as it entered the atmosphere. The crew braced themselves, unsure of what awaited them on the forgotten world. All they knew was that Salven held the answers to a mystery that had haunted humanity for generations. The Unity touched down on the surface of Salven with a soft thud, the ship's landing gear crunching against the dusty ground. The air outside was thick and still, carrying the scent of something ancient, as if time itself had stood still on this forsaken world. Elias stood at the front of the crew, watching through the viewing window as the vast landscape unfolded before them. In the distance, crumbled towers and fractured roads told the story of a civilization that once thrived but had now been forgotten by the galaxy. "Everyone, suit up. We're going out there," Elias commanded, his voice steady and firm. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. This wasn't just another mission. This was a journey into the unknown. As the crew prepared to leave the ship, Dr. Mira Rains lingered by a console, scanning the readings. "Captain, you need to see this," she called out. Elias walked over to her side. The screens flickered with data, most of it indecipherable, but one particular reading stood out, a faint energy pulse coming from deep beneath the planet's surface. It wasn't much, just a flicker, like a heartbeat that had been lying dormant for centuries. "The signal is coming from underground," Mira said, her eyes wide with curiosity. "It's incredibly faint, but it's there." Elias nodded. "Could be an old power source, a defense mechanism, or something else entirely. We won't know until we investigate." With their gear packed and communication devices in place, the team left the ship, stepping onto the dusty soil of Salven. The atmosphere was thin, but breathable. The world was quiet, the only sound the crunch of boots against the dry ground. As they walked, the towering remnants of Valteri architecture rose before them, beautiful, intricate designs now shattered by time. Their structures were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, with smooth curves and glowing symbols etched into the stone. Yet there was an unsettling emptiness in the air. It was as if the land had been abandoned long before the dust began to settle. "Mira, what do you think happened here?" Elias asked, looking around at the destruction. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "From what we know, the Valteri were a highly advanced civilization, one that valued knowledge above all else. But something went wrong, some kind of disaster. There are hints in their archives that their downfall came from within." Elias nodded, his gaze following the path ahead. "Let's just hope we're not walking into something worse than we imagined." The team made their way toward what appeared to be the remains of a city center. Broken statues of the Valteri lined the streets, their faces frozen in expressions of wisdom and sorrow. The place was eerily beautiful, but there was no denying the sense of decay that hung in the air. After hours of searching, they came across what seemed to be a library, one of the most intact buildings they had found so far. Its entrance was partially blocked by debris, but with the combined strength of the crew, they cleared the path. Inside, they found rows of bookshelves filled with ancient scrolls and digital tablets, most of them damaged or decayed beyond repair. Mira immediately knelt down and began scanning the surviving data terminals. She quickly found a few that still held readable information. As she worked, Elias kept watch, his mind racing with the possibility of finding something that could explain the fall of the Veltari. After several tense minutes, Mira's face lit up. "Captain, I think I found something. These archives, they don't just tell the story of the Veltari. They describe a catastrophic event that nearly wiped them out." Elias approached her, leaning over to get a better look. The screen flickered as Mira navigated through the digital files. One particular entry caught their attention: the last days of Kaxalven. Mira read aloud the passage. The Veltari faced a deadly threat, not from natural causes, but from an enemy unlike any they had ever seen. This force, called the Drakva, invaded with advanced weaponry and relentless power. In the final days of the war, the Veltari made the difficult decision to place themselves into stasis, sealing away their fate in the hope that one day they might be able to return. Elias was stunned. So, they didn't die from a plague or disaster. They were forced into hiding. Mira nodded. "It appears so. And now, it seems they've left behind the answers to their survival. We just need to find them." The team moved deeper into the structure, looking for more clues. As they navigated the dimly lit halls, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The silence was too perfect, too unnatural. The hum of their equipment and the occasional clink of boots on stone were the only sounds breaking the stillness. And then, as they reached the heart of the building, they found something unexpected: a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed by layers of old debris. The faint energy pulse they had detected earlier was stronger now, coming from within. "Mira, I think we found it," Elias whispered. With bated breath, the team cleared the entrance, revealing a vast chamber beneath the surface. Inside, surrounded by ancient technology, was what they had been searching for: a vault, sealed and undisturbed for centuries. "This is it," Mira said, her voice filled with awe. "This is where the Veltari made their last stand." But as they stood there, staring at the sealed door, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that opening it might release something far more dangerous than they were prepared to face. The air in the chamber was thick with the weight of centuries. The team stood before the vault, staring at the ancient door, unsure of what lay beyond. The faint energy pulse they had detected was stronger here, vibrating in the walls. Elias could feel his heart race with anticipation. This was it, the moment that would change everything. They had found the heart of the Veltari's last refuge. Mira stepped forward, her hand brushing against the cold surface of the vault's door. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts," she said. "This isn't just some old storage room. This is something much bigger." Elias nodded. "I know. Let's see what's inside." He motioned for the team to prepare. They were not only uncovering the history of a forgotten civilization, but also entering a space filled with unknown technology. One wrong move could lead to disaster. With careful precision, the crew worked to open the vault. They used their tools to bypass the ancient locks, their fingers trembling as they deciphered the complex mechanism. After what felt like an eternity, the vault door finally creaked open, revealing the hidden room beyond. The team stepped inside, their boots echoing in the silence. The room was larger than they had expected, filled with rows of strange machines and glowing crystals embedded in the walls. At the center of the room stood an enormous pedestal, covered in dust, but still radiating a faint, steady light. The entire room seemed to hum with power. "This is unbelievable," Mira whispered, her voice filled with awe. She carefully approached the pedestal, her eyes scanning the intricate carvings and symbols etched into its surface. This is Veltari technology, no doubt. But it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Elias took a deep breath, trying to keep his excitement in check. What do you think it is? Mira looked up at him, her eyes wide with fascination. It's some sort of data repository, but it's much more advanced than any technology we encountered. I think it contains the entire history of the Veltari, their knowledge, their culture, their downfall. Before Elias could respond, the pedestal activated with a soft hum. A holographic display flickered to life above it, revealing the stunning image of the Veltari homeworld. Then, before its fall, the hologram zoomed in, showing lush landscapes, vibrant cities, and the proud people of the Veltari, living in harmony. This is incredible, Mira breathed. It's like watching a memory from the past. The hologram shifted, showing a sudden change. The vibrant cities became shadowed, the skies turned dark, and the Veltari people were seen scrambling for survival. Large ships, unlike anything the crew had ever seen, descended from the heavens. Drakva ships. They were sleek, terrifying, and far more advanced than the Veltari's own technology. Elias's blood ran cold. He had heard of the Drakva, an ancient enemy that the Veltari had fought long ago. Their empire was built on destruction and conquest, but to see their ships in such a vivid display, witnessing the fall of an entire civilization, it was overwhelming. Exactly, Mira said, her voice quiet. And that division might have been what made them so vulnerable. The Drakva didn't just attack their cities, they attacked their unity. They made the Veltari question themselves, doubt their future. By the time the invasion came, they were already too weakened to defend against it. Elias felt a chill run through him. The idea of a civilization being torn apart from the inside was a troubling thought. It made him think of humanity. Could something like that happen to them? Could they fall apart before an external threat even arrived? I can't believe this, Elias muttered. How do you fight something like that? An enemy that doesn't just invade your world, they invade your mind. Mira's gaze was steady. That's why we need to be prepared. We've seen how the Drakva operate. They're not just soldiers, they're conquerors, but they also manipulate. They know how to break a people's spirit. And the Veltari, they were too focused on their own divisions. Elias turned back to the map. There had to be more to this than just an invasion. There had to be a reason why the Drakva had been so successful in breaking the Veltari apart. And if they were going to stand a chance against them, they needed to understand that reason. Okay, Elias said, his voice steady. We'll start with the closest base. It might give us some answers about the Veltari's downfall and what the Drakva did to cause it. But we need to be careful. If we're right about their power, we could be walking into a trap. Mira nodded. We'll be ready, but we need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more time the Drakva have to regroup. Elias turned to his crew, all of whom were now focused on the map and data, analyzing every piece of information. We'll make our move at first light. Get some rest while you can. This is just the beginning. As the crew dispersed to prepare for the journey, Elias felt a growing sense of urgency. They were about to enter unknown territory, territory that might hold the key to saving humanity from an enemy that had already destroyed an entire civilization. But with every step they took, the danger grew. The Drakva were out there, and now they had found something that might finally make them a real threat to humanity. Elias had no illusions. This wasn't just a mission for knowledge anymore. It was a mission for survival. The days blended together as the Unity traveled deeper into unknown space. Elias and his crew were more determined than ever to uncover the truth behind the Veltari's fall. They had set course for one of the most mysterious and strategically important Veltari bases, a place said to hold both answers and danger. The base was located on a small, forgotten moon, tucked away in a remote system. It had been abandoned long before the Drakva had arrived. The Velteri had left it behind, but why? What had caused them to retreat so far from this outpost? These questions plagued Elias as he stared out the window of the Unity, the cold silence of space surrounding him. "We're almost there, Captain." Mira's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Scanners are picking up traces of activity on the surface. But it's faint. We might not be the only ones interested in this place." Elias nodded, his mind racing. If the Drakva were aware of this base, it would explain why it had been left untouched for so long. They might have avoided it because they were already preparing for a greater battle, or perhaps they didn't know about it at all. Either way, they couldn't afford to take chances. "Ready the team," Elias said. "We'll investigate the surface. Stay alert, everyone. We don't know what we'll find down there." Soon, the Unity hovered above the moon, its engines thrumming softly as it settled into place. The planet's surface was covered in craters and dust, with a single large facility rising from the rocky landscape. The base was vast, with towering spires and dark, metallic walls that seemed to hold secrets. The team suited up quickly, preparing for whatever awaited them. Elias led the group, his thoughts focused. What would they find inside? The Velteri had hidden their knowledge here, but it could be far more than that. They needed answers that could protect humanity and prevent the same fate that had befallen the Velteri. The doors to the Unity opened with a hiss, and the team filed out, stepping onto the surface of the moon. The ground was cold and uneven, but the silence was deafening. Not a single sound other than their footsteps broke through the emptiness. Mira and the others quickly activated their comms. "Scanners are detecting unusual readings near the entrance. It looks like it's still powered on, but the systems are degraded." "We're going to that planet," Elias said. "That's where the dark seed is hidden. If we don't get there first, we won't stand a chance." The Unity's engines roared to life, and the ship set a course for the distant planet. As the stars blurred outside the window, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. Every second counted. Hours later, they arrived at the planet. It was nothing like they had expected. The surface was covered in thick, swirling clouds, and the atmosphere was filled with strange, unnatural energy. There was no sign of life, but the planet seemed alive in a way, like it was watching them, waiting. "This place feels wrong," Mira muttered, her voice low as she stood next to Elias. "It's like the planet itself is guarding something." Elias didn't respond. He couldn't agree more. The feeling of unease gnawed at him as they prepared to land. They had no idea what they were walking into, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. The dark seed was somewhere down there, and they had to find it before it was too late. The Unity touched down on the surface with a soft thud. The crew quickly suited up and gathered their gear. As they stepped outside, they were greeted by the oppressive silence of the planet. The air was heavy with static, and the ground was covered in strange black stones that seemed to absorb the light around them. "This place gives me the creeps," Mira said, looking around nervously. Elias nodded but didn't speak. His mind was focused on the mission. They had to find the source of the dark seed, and they had to do it fast. The team moved out, following the coordinates they had uncovered. The terrain was treacherous, with jagged rocks and deep ravines that seemed to stretch forever. Every step felt like they were getting closer to something ancient, something powerful. Finally, after hours of searching, they found what they were looking for. A massive structure, hidden beneath the surface of the planet, appeared before them. It was built into the planet's crust, its walls covered in strange symbols and glowing markings. The air around it crackled with energy, and a faint hum could be heard emanating from within. "This is it," Elias said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "This is where they hid the dark seed." The doors to the structure were large and imposing, but they opened easily as the crew approached. Inside, the temperature dropped, and the air became thick with a strange, unnatural presence. The walls of the chamber were lined with strange devices, some of them glowing with an eerie light. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and upon it lay a small dark crystal. It was the dark seed. The crystal pulsed with a dark energy, and as Elias stepped closer, he felt it tug at his mind, whispering to him, calling to him. It was as if the crystal wanted to be free, to grow and spread its power. Elias hesitated for a moment, but then his training kicked in. He couldn't let this thing fall into the wrong hands. The dark seed had to be destroyed. Before he could act, Mira stepped forward. "Wait, Captain. We don't know what this thing can do. If we destroy it, we could be unleashing something far worse." Elias looked at her, torn. He knew she was right. But they couldn't take that risk. The universe had already seen what happened when the Velteri tried to control the dark seed. They had to end it now. "I don't have a choice," Elias said, his voice steady. "We'll have to find another way." As the crew began to prepare for the next step, the ground beneath them trembled, and a low rumble filled the room. The dark seed was awakening. Something had triggered its power, and now there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension as Elias and the crew stood in the heart of the dark chamber. The dark seed pulsed ominously on its pedestal, the eerie hum of its energy filling the room. It was as if the crystal had a mind of its own, pulling them in, tempting them to take action. But they knew that whatever they did next could decide the fate of the galaxy. Elias took a deep breath, his fingers twitching near the weapon he had brought with him, a high-energy disruptor designed to neutralize dangerous artifacts. But something in the back of his mind held him back. Mira's warning echoed in his thoughts. "If we destroy it, we could be unleashing something far worse." "Captain, we don't know what this thing can do," Mira said quietly, her voice filled with concern. "We might not have a choice anymore, but we need to be careful." Elias nodded but didn't speak. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. What if Mira was right? What if destroying the dark seed triggered something that could spread across the galaxy, bringing destruction with it? Could they take that risk?